Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Dear students, today we are going to complete our discussion of Ghosts by Henrik Ibsen. You're going to have first a summary of the major events of Ghosts, Act 1, and then we're going to have a kind of a commentary, a critical commentary of the same act, Act 1. Regina Engstrand, a young girl in service of Mrs. Alving, appears in the garden. She tries to prevent her father, Jacob Engstrand, from entering. The rain makes the old man even more disreputable looking than usual. And Regina makes it clear she's ashamed of his coarseness. Coarseness means roughness, okay, and vulgar appearance. Engstrand has come to ask Regina to live with him, as we mentioned in our lecture last time, to live with him and work for him in his planned seaman's home. Of course, we know what he intends to do in that seaman's home. He says he has saved enough money from doing carpentry work. He's a carpenter on the new orphanage to begin this enterprise, this project. And now that she has grown into such a fine wench, he called her by this. He described her as being a fine wench. A wench is a young woman, okay, a young, beautiful woman. She would be a valuable asset for her father, for himself, of course. He will make use of her, of his daughter. He clearly implies that this seaman's home will be a high-class brothel, B-R-O-T-H-E-L, brothel. It's a prostitution house, okay? Regina says she has her own plans for the future, for her own future, especially since Oswald Alving had just returned home from his studies in Paris, in Europe. Pastor Manders, the priest of this small town by the sea, enters after Engstrand has left. He talks with Regina about her father. Since Engstrand requires a strong influence to keep him from drinking, Manders suggested that Regina, the daughter, out of her familial duty, return to live with him. She must go back to live with her father and be the guiding hand, as he describes her. She should be the guiding hand for her father in her father's life. Regina says she would rather seek a place in town as a governess for younger children. While the girl, Regina, goes to fetch Mrs. Alving, Manders peruses some books, reads carefully through some books on the table. He gives a start. He is shocked after reading the title page of one of the books on the table, just one, and with increasing disapproval looks at some others before even reading the titles. In a friendly and affectionate way, Mrs. Alving comes in to greet him, politely inquiring after Oswald. Manders then asks who reads these books. He begins to ask questions about these books laid upon the table. Shocked to find they are Mrs. Alving's belongs to her. He wonders how such readings, how such books could contribute to her feeling of self-reliance. She claims that these books help her acquire the sense of self-reliance, self-dependence, as she puts it, or how they can confirm her own impressions. What is objectionable about the books? She asks him. What are the objections you have against these books, against reading such books? He says, I have read quite enough about them to disapprove of them. But your own opinion, she answers back, but your own opinion, this is your own opinion. And then he talks as if to a child. He answers back as if he's addressing a child. He says, and I quote, My dear Mrs. Alving, there are many occasions in life when one has to rely on the opinions of others. That is the way in the world, and it is quite right that it should be so. What would become society otherwise? He now wishes to discuss their mutual business. He goes on to discuss something else, their mutual business, the orphanage. The Captain Alving Orphanage, as Mrs. Alving decides to call it or name it, built by Mrs. Alving herself in honor of her late husband. Although she has left all the arrangements to Manders, to this priest, he wants to ask whether they should insure the buildings. This is the first subject regarding this orphanage. Should we insure the building or not? When she answers him with, of course, he raises objections. Another set of objections. Since the orphanage is dedicated to, to higher causes, as he called them, higher causes. He points out that he means that his fellow clergyman, he's a clergyman, his fellow clergymen and their congregations, their gatherings in the church, might interpret the insurance to mean that neither you nor I had a proper reliance on divine protection. We don't believe in the protection of God. These clergymen might assume so, might say so. We mustn't give them the chance to do that. As Mrs. Alving's advisor, Mr. Manders, he himself will be the first attacked by spiteful persons, as he called them. Okay, he protects his own reputation. Spiteful persons who would publicly slander him, defame him. Okay, so he's afraid more about his being disreputed in this small circle of the society. She assures him that under these conditions, she wouldn't wish the buildings insured. Okay, no need to insure the building, the orphanage at all. Speaking of insurance, Ms. Alving mentioned that the building nearly caught fire yesterday from one burning shavings in the carpenter's shop, of course, where Mr. Engstrand, the carpenter, works. She said that she has heard that Engstrand is often careless with matches. Manders makes excuses because the poor fellow, he means Engstrand, he makes excuses for Engstrand. The poor fellow, as he calls him, has so many anxieties, so many worries, so many fears. Heaven be thanked, Miss Manders says. Heaven be thanked. I am told he is really making an effort to live a blameless life. A blameless life means a respectable life. Why, he assured me so himself. Manders thinks it would be best for Engstrand if Regina returned to live with him, to go live with her father. But Miss Alving's firm answer, she answered him firmly, no. Her answer was definitive. Oswald appears at this stage, at this part of the first act. Oswald, the son who had just returned from Paris, appears on the stage, bearing so much likeness to his late father, dead father, that Manders is startled. Oh my God. Much like his father, like son, in appearance and in behavior, by the way. Miss Alving quickly insists that her son takes after her. No, he takes after me, not his father. During their conversation, Oswald shocks the pastor, the priest, by telling him about, by describing the fidelity. Of course, fidelity means loyalty or faithfulness, to family or married life. The fidelity and beauty of family life among the common law marriages of his fellow painters, among those other painters he knows quite well in Paris. Disapproving of artists in the first place. Of course, you know that Manders hates literature, hates art in general, so he disapproves artists. He enrages, at such circles, at such societies as the painters' society or community. He says, where open immorality is rampant, at such places, in such societies, open immorality is rampant, is everywhere, is spread everywhere. He can't understand how as he says, he can't understand how the authorities would tolerate such things, and is even more dismayed, or he becomes even more dismayed or disappointed when Mrs. Alving later on declared that Oswald was right in every single word he said. He's shocked at that. In her loneliness, she continues to say that she has come to the same conclusions as her son. That, what is this conclusion? That the married men of good social standing and breeding are capable of greatest acts of immorality. Even married men of good social standing, social class and breeding are capable of, can do the greatest acts of immorality. Well, Manders says at this point, it is his duty to speak now, but not just as a friend, as a priest. It is your priest, as he says, it is your priest that stands before you, just as he once did at the most critical moment of your life. He reminds her of past events in life, and here we find Ibsen giving us a kind of retrospection, a flashback of the past. And this part, the second part, the final 3 or 4 pages of Act 1 are very important regarding retrospection. It is your pastor that stands before you, just as he once did, standing beside you, just as he once did, at the most critical moment of your life, the most difficult moment of your life. He begins to remind her how she came to him after the first year of her marriage, refusing to return to her husband. She left her husband, refused to come back again. But she softly, gently reminds him that the first year was of a married life. The first year was unspeakably unhappy. Unspeakably unhappy. Greatly unhappy. But he answers, to crave for happiness, to long for happiness, is simply to be. Happiness, according to Manders, means to be possessed by a spirit of revolt. You, as a rebellious woman, sees happiness as a kind of revolt, a rebellion. To you, happiness means a rebellion. To leave your husband, this is a kind of rebellious behavior. Bound in marriage, tied in marriage, shackled, chained by marriage, by a sacred bond, her duty was to cleave, according to him, according to his beliefs. Her duty was supposed to be to cleave or to stick. To cleave means to stick. To the man you had chosen, you must have stayed by your husband, never leave him alone. Though this husband, is a profligate, is a wasteful person, despite this fact, according to him, a wife's duty is to bear the cross laid upon her shoulders, to bear it out by a higher will. The wife must bear this kind of load, heavy load upon her shoulders by a higher will. He means, of course, the will of God. Manders assumes to be so. It was, according to him, it was imprudent and unwise behavior for her to have sought refuge with him, was Manders himself, at the time in the past. And he's proud, he is very proudful that he has had the strength, the power to lead her back to her husband, to the path of duty, to get her back on the right path of social duty, and back to her husband, of course. And so, having failed in her wifely duty, her duty as a wife, she failed in that, her wifely duty. She also neglected her duty as a mother. She failed, according to his opinion, of course, she failed in her duty as a mother, both as a wife and as a mother. Because, she sent Oswald when he was only 10 years old abroad to a boarding school all his life, rather than educating him at home, keeping him at home, educating her own child. The child has become a thorough profligate, a complete image of his late father, a profligate, a wasteful person, just as his father. He says, in truth, Miss Alfing, you are a guilty mother. He claims that you are a guilty mother. Well, these conclusions are, according to Mrs. Alving, she answers back that these conclusions, your remarks are unjust. For Manders knew nothing of her life from the moment on. He doesn't know quite well about what she has passed through. He must know now that, as she says exactly in her own words, he must know now that my husband died just as great a profligate as he had been all his life. This shocks him, of course. In fact, she tells him a disease he contracted okay, from his lifelong excesses, a disease caused by his lifelong excesses, wrongdoings, drinking, prostitution work, and so caused his own death. Okay, to think that all the years of her wedded life were nothing but, as she describes these years, okay, she said that her wedded life, these years, are but a hidden abyss, okay, a hidden abyss. And abyss, of course, is a deep hole, okay, a hidden abyss of misery, a complete life of misery, a complete miserable life. No one knows about that. Okay, when she said that to him, his brain begins to reel, to stagger. She shocks him so quite well. She said that her husband's scandalous conduct, scandalous behavior, invaded the walls of this very house. Okay, shook the foundations of this house. For she witnessed Alving's approaches. This is one of the scenes she remembers at this moment. She witnessed when her husband approached her servant Joanna, the mother of Regina. Approached, it means harassed. He even made or got into a sexual intercourse with that Joanna, with that servant. My husband, she says, my husband had his will of that girl. He had his will of that girl. He did that scandalous action, that scandalous behavior. He raped her. Okay? He made sex with her. And that intimacy, as she says, that kind of intimacy, that relationship had consequences. Oh my God. Consequences. Only later on, of course, Manders discovered that this kind of consequence, these consequences are Regina. The product of this illegal relationship, immoral relationship, is Regina, the daughter. Ms. Alving goes on to describe how she set up with her husband during his drinking bouts, his drinking frenzies. Okay, not only he made something wrong with Regina's mother, no, he's a drunkard. Okay, she described these moments in which he sat with him in his drinking bouts, drinking frenzies, being his companion, so he wouldn't leave the house to seek others, to seek other people, other females. She had to listen to his sexually rude speech, sexually rude hints, and then bring him to bed when he is totally drunken. She endured all this for Oswald's sake, for her own son's sake, sending him, of course, to a boarding school outside the country in Paris, when he began asking questions, adult questions. Why does my father do that? Why he is not always awake, sleeping, drinking, not conscious? As long as his father was alive, Oswald never set foot in his home. Okay, she took an oath. As long as his father is alive, Oswald will never set foot in the house. Besides caring for her son, she also had work to sustain her. She cared about or for the work of her husband. Her husband depended on her to keep him in touch with his work during his drinking intervals, drinking habits. She improved and arranged all his properties, and she is converting his share of the estate into another name, the Captain Alvig orphanage. By this gesture, okay, Mrs. Alving hopes to. Why does she do that? Why is she building an orphanage for her late, to commemorate the memory of her late husband? As she says, to silence all rumors, شاعت, all rumors, and clear away all doubt about her husband. As to the truth of her husband's life, she wants to hide, to conceal her husband's misconduct while alive. None of his father's estate shall pass. Not only this, she takes another oath. None of his father's estate shall pass on to Oswald. He shall inherit nothing of his father's properties. My son shall have everything from me instead. Complaining of this everlasting reign, of course, you know that from the very beginning of Act 1, there is a continuous, non-stop reign outside. Complaining of this everlasting reign, Oswald returns home from a walk outside. When Regina announces that dinner is ready, Oswald follows her into the dining room to uncork the wines, to open the bottles of wine. Meanwhile, Manders and Mrs. Alving discuss the dedication ceremony for the opening of the orphanage tomorrow. She regards the occasion opening an orphanage, she regards the occasion as the end of this long, dreadful comedy. She describes his own life in the past as a long, dreadful comedy. After tomorrow, she shall feel as if her dead husband had never lived here. Then, according to her, there will be no one else but my boy and his mother herself. At this moment, they hear a quiet scuffle. No, a scuffle is a short and slightly violent sound. Okay? A short and slightly violent sound. From the next room, they hear something going on in the next room, the dining room. Then Regina's whisper. She hears, both of them indeed, Miss Alving and the pastor hear together Regina's whisper, Oswald, are you mad? Let me go. At this moment, horror struck Mrs. Alving roughly, and she roughly whispers to Mr. Manders beside her, ghosts, these are the ghosts. These are the burdens of the past. These what I have been always afraid that Oswald might inherit from his father, from the past, from the older generation of the society. Ghosts, the couple in the conservatory over again. He is bewildered and says to her, what are you saying, Regina? What are you saying, Regina? Is she? His hostess nods helplessly. Yes, she is Regina. She is the product of this illegitimate relationship between the late husband and Duana. She is, at this moment, the curtains fall down. Now we move on to have a kind of a critical commentary on Act 1. We can say that as the first act functions to introduce the characters, yes, the first act functions as an introduction to the different characters on the stage. As we see them in action, the central problem of the play, as well as the essential plot line, okay, Ibsen, you can notice that Ibsen carefully forewarns his audience, you, the readers, of the themes he will develop or discuss in subsequent acts. In fact, the first scene of well-written drama often presents a complete analogy of the whole play. An analogy is a comparison between two things or two persons who are relative, very similar in their characteristics or qualities. Okay, so a good quality, well-written drama often presents to the reader in the first act a complete analogy of the whole play. With this in mind, bearing this in mind, the author Ibsen lays a special significance on the order of the appearance of his characters. It's very important, not randomly done. Regina is the first to appear, of course, the daughter, showing by dress and behavior that she is a properly reared, brought up servant maid. As she talks with her father, when you notice her talking with her father, the audience recognizes that though she is innately vulgar, okay, she is innately from within, her real character is a vulgar character. She has aspirations to gentility. She aspires to nobility. Okay, this is shown as she uses her little knowledge of French, for example. She uses some French words. Okay. Engstrand's appearance features the theme of a depraved parent who traps his own child in his own disillusion, his own mistakes, moral mistakes. Especially as he asks Regina to join him in his planned enterprise, the brothel, the prostitution house for seamen, implying that she isn't his true-born daughter. Of course she isn't. Implying that she isn't his true-born daughter. Ibsen also introduces the theme of, the theme that children, although unaware of their origins, children inherit qualities from their fathers, from their parents. As Regina accuses her father of being able to humbug, to ridicule, makes fun of, to humbug the Reverend, okay, and later on showing how Manders accepts Engstrand's hypocrisy for fact, as a real fact, Ibsen introduces the idea that society recognizes the process of phrase mongering, the skill of coining memorable phrases. The society highly appreciates those people who are capable of phrase mongering, rather than over integrity of thought and action at the standard of moral respectability in society. Pastor Manders, the third character we have, appears next, suggesting that Regina return to live with her father. He insists that she must go back. And this suggestion shows how he allies himself with Jacob Engstrand. Okay? The respectability and social traditionality which he expresses in phrases such as daughter's duty, for example, rather than defining his principle through thoughtful inquiries, show that Manders supports anyone whose cant, whose hypocrisy agrees with his own. And so he sides with Engstrand. After Manders carefully reads the books on the table, Mrs. Alving, the fourth character, to appear on the stage, Mrs. Alving appears. The audience senses that she is separated from the pastor by an abyss, by a deep hole, created by her, not a physical, not a real physical, abyss. No, an abyss of intellect and life experiences. Okay, as symbolized by the books. The book stands for her intellect, her intellectual superiority and experiences. This is one of the symbols of the play. Arranged on the table, which stands between them, the books, okay, which are arranged on the table between, or that separates the two. These books are in fact their first subject of debate or disagreement. One doesn't have to read them to denounce them. Manders states that I don't have to read the books to denounce, to deny what they have inside, okay? He isn't content to accept the opinions of others as proposed in these books. By her answers in this kind of intense dialogue, intense debate over the books, Ms. Alving shows she is no longer satisfied by such dogmatic beliefs, such static beliefs, immovable beliefs as those of Manders. She must learn truth through her own experience, not other people's experiences. Since Manders indicates no ability to learn anything not expressed piously, he doesn't approve anything expressed, said, or done unpiously. Okay? We can't expect this character of Manders, to change during the entire play. Okay? A static character. Mrs. Alving, on the other hand, welcomes controversy and opposes the results of her experience to what she has always been taught. She can reverse or change her own opinions according to the situation. Okay? She is fully prepared to face the full impact of the coming events in the rest of the play. She is ready for anything. This quality marks her as the protagonist of the entire play. Okay? Having established these intellectual qualities as a mother, okay, Ibsen now brings forth Oswald to the stage, who is the greatest he will be. Indeed, Oswald will be the greatest problem she will ever have, she will ever confront in her life. This arrangement of characters' introduction on the stage, of characters' appearances on the stage, this arrangement by Ibsen suggests that the opposing tensions of the play are quite valid, quite apparent. Regina, I'll explain that. Regina, her dead mother, and Engstrand, parallel, equal, okay? Oswald, his mother, and the dead Mr. Alving. One side represents the part of the society whose members have loose morals, decayed morals, who have aspirations to gentility, to nobility, to ascend onto the upper class. Okay, so they are morally loose and dreaming of a higher class, joining the upper class. Something else, they grab at whatever opportunity for self-betterment they can. They are opportunists. The other side of the equation, the other side, we have the best in the society. Ibsen gives us the best picture, the best people of the society, the higher rank of the society. A group whose members, are cultured, well educated, land owning, very rich, and have strong ethics, but apparently, superficially ethical. So we have two contradictory, two paradoxical sides of the society on the same stage. In the middle, between both sides, we have this Pastor Manders. He appears as, immoralizing person, immoralizing character, but at the same time he is empty-headed. So he is portrayed as immoralizing but empty-headed standard of the society. How complex is this character? He denounces Mrs. Alving's intellectual inclinations and supports Engstrand's hypocrisy. On one hand, he denounces the intellectual inclinations of the mother, Mrs. Alving, and meantime, he encourages and supports the hypocrisy of Engstrand. How contradictory. As such, in this way, the character of Manders, this pastor, allows the audience, allows you to foresee, to predict the theses, the supposition, the proposition of the entire play, of the entire drama. What is this thesis or proposition? A society which unwittingly, unwisely destroys individuality and the individuality of its members, the uniqueness of each individual in this society. A society which destroys unwittingly the individuality of the people and encourages instead deceit, deceptiveness. In this way, this society spreads disease, plagues that are physical as well as moral, physically, morally, and even emotionally. Disease, immoral, emotional, and physical disease. In its youthful, it implants these diseases in its youthful members. Thank you. We'll go on and complete our lectures next time, inshallah.